Alright, so in this video we're going to cover if, and, or, and XOR functions. Everything we cover in this video will be applicable for Excel and Google Sheets. Let's start with if function. So if function, if we start with equals if, the first argument in this function is what we call logical test. So I'm going to do some very basic logical tests and then we'll move on to something a little more complex. So if this number, so I'm going to click on that F2 cell, if that's greater than, I'm going to use something like 50, comma, and then after comma, you say, what do you want to happen if this is true? So right now it's going to check, is this greater than 50, but it's going to be false because it's not. Let's say it was true. So what happens if it's true? So if it's true, let's say we're going to say good number. So if it's text, it's going to be in quotes. So I'm just going to type that. And then after the next comma, we do what happens if it's false. So we'll do bad number, I guess. And again, in quotations, because that's text, I'm going to close parentheses, hit enter. Now, since this number is not greater than 50, we should get bad number as a result. Let's try this. Hit enter. There it is, bad number. Now, if I try to drag this formula down, see these numbers are now greater than whatever number I had here, 50. So we get good number for the rest of them. And this would be what we call a classic if formula. So if function accepts the first argument, which is a logical test. And by logical test, what that means is that it's something that's going to either return true or false. What that means, if I just type true as the first argument, that will make that function only output the first result because it's always going to be hard-coded true. So if I hit enter right now, this is going to give me good number. Now if I switch this true to false, and I hit enter, it's going to give me a bad number because that's false. Usually, instead of hard coding true and false, you will create something that will provide you that true and false, which you can get using comparison, similar to what I had, which is let's test if this is greater than something else. And that would be comparison, which will return true or it will return false. Now, in addition to trues and falses, if function will also evaluate 0 as false. So if you get any logical test that will return 0, or if you just simply hard code 0 in here, that will evaluate to false. So this is going to go to bad number. If I hit enter, that's going to go to bad number, as you can see. And finally, any other number than 0 will evaluate to true. So if I type number 1, that's going to go to good number. If I type number 15, that will also evaluate to true. Even if I do negative 15, that will evaluate as true. So any number that's not a 0 evaluates to true. And what that means, if I had some zeros here, let's do something like that. And if I wanted to just get everything that's a 0 and everything that's non-zero, I could simply just say if this, so this number here, this cost is not 0, that will evaluate to true. So this will be cost exists and the rest is false, so 0 will be false. So cost does not exist. If I hit enter, that's going to say that. If I drag this down, everything that's a 0 is going to say cost does not exist because 0 will evaluate to false. Okay, moving on to classic logical tests. So classic logical tests usually will have two values that you compare. You'll have one value. So let's move back to sales and you can compare that with a comparison operator, which is, for example, greater than, and you can type your number. Now, comparison operators you have, so we're comparing two values, left and right, and what's in the middle is comparison operator. So we can compare with greater than, we can compare greater than or equal to. That means that if it's a 50, that will also return true, and if it's just greater than, it has to be higher than 50, 50 not included, right? Then you can do less than, in a similar fashion, less than or equal to. You want to be careful with this greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. You want to make sure that that equal to sign appears always after less than or greater than sign, not the other way, or you're going to get a syntax error. In addition to those, you can also do this, which means not equal to. So right now I'm checking, is that number not equal to 50? And it's not, right? So you're gonna get true in this case. And finally, you can also do equal to. So you will be comparing, is this number equal to 50? It isn't, so we should be getting false, which means this will return whatever is in here in our false bracket. Now let's do some text comparisons so we can use them in a proper way. So what I'm gonna do, instead of checking is the number is 50, I'm gonna just check, is this state equal to Illinois? And because this is a text comparison, my text has to be in quotes. See, I'm checking, is this C2 equals to Illinois? And if it is, I'm going to say yes. Otherwise, I'm going to say no. Drag it down. As you can see, that picks up all state of Illinois, and it's not case sensitive, as you can see. So lowercase Illinois and uppercase Illinois, that would be equal in this particular case. I could also do, is it not equal to Illinois, to reverse this logic, and now we should get no for Illinois and yes for everything else. So that's a text comparison. So remember, text will always go in quotes, numbers will not. So you'll put numbers as a number. Now let's also do a date comparison. So here we'll have some dates. I'm going to try to compare, is this date greater than a certain date? Now, interesting thing about dates is that they're a little harder to work with than the rest of values, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to just compare, is that greater than, for example, and if I did something like 1/1/2014, that should be greater than 1/1/2014, right? This date appears after this. Now I'm gonna say yes if it is, no if it isn't. So I'm gonna hit enter, and it says yes, and that appears to be valid, right? So let's try something else. Let's change this to 2020. Now this should be no, because this date is not greater than this date. So I'm gonna hit enter, and it still says yes. So it picks up yes, this evaluates to true. It says that this is greater than this. And the reason for that is that what I'm getting right now, this is not a date comparison. What this is for Excel or our spreadsheet application is that we take this division, we take 1, divide by another 1, so that would give us 1, and then we divide that 1 by 2020, so we get an extremely small number. So just to show you what happens here, I'm going to evaluate this with F9. So we get this number 0.00000, and basically we evaluate, is that less than this date? And this date will evaluate to the date serial number, which will surely be greater than that. See, the serial number for that date is 42,133. So we're basically comparing, is this number greater than this? And obviously this is greater than that. But that's not what we're going for, right? We don't want to compare these as numbers. We want to compare them as dates. So how do we do that? So the next thing that usually comes to mind is, why don't we put this date in quotes? So you go here and type, okay, so 1/1/2014. So now I'm comparing, is this date greater than 1/1/2014? Or that's what I think I'm doing, right? So this in my mind should be returning yes, because this date is greater than that date. So I'm gonna hit enter and I'm gonna get a no. And again, we have the same issue here because we're comparing these two values as text values. And what happens, we take this A2 and that's a number, and this is text. And if we sort this, numbers will sort above our text, so that text will make it greater. So right now, text for it is greater than a number. So in our comparison, this is a false comparison. So we should be getting a no, which is what we basically get. But what we're expecting is to get a yes. So for that reason, when you compare a date, you need to compare a date to the number of the date. So this A2 is going to return us a number, which is a serial code. This is our serial code. We need to compare that serial code to the other serial code, which is going to be, let me just fix this really quick, which is going to be the serial code for this date. Now to get the serial code for that date, we're going to use this function called date value. So we're going to wrap this text in this date value function, and this date value function will return the serial code for this date that we're comparing it to, and then our comparison will work. So if I hit enter, this would be a proper comparison now. So all these dates are greater than 2014. Now let's try to do something like 2017 here. That is not greater than, but this, as you can see, it is. So we get a proper yes or no. So with dates, be careful. Don't type your dates just like that in your formula. Otherwise, it's not a valid comparison. Okay, so now going back to our sales. So let's say I want to see if my sales number is between two numbers. So I want to get all sales that are between $200 and $300. So if I say this is greater than 200, obviously that will pick up every sale that's greater than 200. So if I drag it down, see, that's a yes, this is a no, because it's not. Now I want to also have an upper limit. So now we have to check two conditions at the same time. Now when you check for two conditions, you will start using functions AND, OR XOR. So let's see how those work. So what I'm going to do first, just to make this easier to read, I'm just going to add a few spaces here around this logical test, so we can just have this logical test by itself. So what I'm going to do, instead of doing this, I'm going to just have another function AND inside of my if function. So there it is, my AND function inside of my if function. Now AND function is a function that will accept multiple logical tests. So what I can do now, I can say, is this greater than 200, and then do a comma, and then check if that is also less than 300. So now I have two conditions. You could keep going, you could do another comma, and you're now testing for a third condition. But for now, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to clear that comma. So basically the idea of AND function, the only time this AND function is going to return a true is when every single logical test that you provide to that function is true. So if at least one of those logical tests fails and you get a false, you're going to get a false for the whole AND function. And because of that, we can use this for this between type of comparison. I can hit enter. See, it's a no because it's not between 200 and 300. Now I'm gonna drag this down. This is also a no because it's not between 200 and 300. As a matter of fact, a lot of these aren't until we get to this one. That's between 200 and 300. And did I drag it down enough? Apparently I did not. There it is. So now that is also greater than 200 and less than 300. So the rest do not pass the comparison. And that's an example of AND function. Now let's say I have third condition. Not only I want the number to be between 200 and 300, I want to also make sure that's in the state of Tennessee, right? So there we are. So for that, I'm going to go back here and add another argument in my AND function. I'm going to do comma, and I'm going to check, is this equal to TN? So now I have yet another condition that has to pass for this to be true. I'm going to hit enter, drag this down, and as you can see now, this is now false because the state doesn't match. And this one does, so we get all the numbers between 200 and 300 that are in this state. And you can keep chaining, so you can do another comma and keep going until you have all the conditions you want to be met. So let's do another example here. So hopefully that makes it more clear. I'm going to do another AND function here. Let's say I want to pick up everything from the state of California when it's not on sale. So everything needs to be California and regular price for that to be true. So I'm going to just check that. I'm going to say that should be equal to CA for California, comma, and this should be equal to regular price. Don't forget the quotations. Now I have two conditions here, so that's obviously not gonna pass. We're gonna drag it down, and let's take a look. So as you can see, California on sale, that's a no. However, California regular price, that's a yes, because both conditions are met. So that's our AND function. Let's do an example of OR function. OR function is when you want to have multiple conditions, but you only want one of them to be true. So if at least one of those conditions is true, you're just going to say, that's fine, let's just make this true, otherwise let's make it false. So with AND condition, every single one of them needs to be true. With OR condition, at least one of them has to be true. So let's do an example of that. I'm going to do OR. So if it's on sale, I want to say yes, regardless whether that's from Illinois or not. Otherwise, if it's Illinois, I definitely want to say yes, even if it's with regular price. So I'm going to say if this equals to Illinois, comma, or this equals to on sale. So if I enter, see, that's not on sale, but it is Illinois. So that should give us yes, the true argument, because one of them will pass. And if I drag it down, this one as well is going to say yes, because while both of them pass, we said at least one of them. That's fine. And then the same thing here. So this is a no because none of them did pass. And for this, at least one of them did pass on sale. So that's going to give us true. So a classic way, I guess, to use OR function, although there are tons of ways to use this, obviously. Let's say we wanted to pick up everything for Illinois and California, right? Both of those states we want to mark yes. So this is not going to be an AND function, because if we do AND, this will not work. And let me show you why. So if I check this and say, I want that to be Illinois and California, I want both of those to be marked as yes, right? So if I change this to AND instead of OR, what's going to happen, we're basically checking the cell to be Illinois and California at the same time. You would never have the same cell to be two things at the same time. So this will always evaluate to false. So we're going to get a no for every single one of these. Now, if I change this to OR, however, that will be exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to hit enter and drag it down. And we're going to get our yeses for Illinois and California and no for everybody else. So that would be another way to use OR statement. And obviously, just to mention this, you can obviously do more OR statements here. So you can do another comma and keep going. And finally for XOR. So XOR is another logical function. And with XOR, the idea is that if you get odd number of truths, this will be true. Otherwise, it's going to be false. So what that means, for example, if you give XOR true, that's an odd number of truths. This would say now yes, because we have odd number of truths in XOR. So there it is, yes. Now, if I do another true in this function, now I have two truths. This will be false because that's not odd number of truths. Now we have even number of truths, so that's not going to work. Now, whether you have falses here or not, that really doesn't matter. So you can have tons of falses here. That will not affect how the output of this function is going to work. So all we care about that we have right now even number of truths. So this will evaluate to false anyways. So that goes to our no. Now, anytime I add another true to this function, now we have even number of truths because we have 3 of them. So this will evaluate to yes, which is true. So that's how XOR function works. Now, finally, if you have just false, that will evaluate to false. That's how XOR function works. Now, use cases for this are not as common as or an AND function, but where it's handy sometimes is when you have a situation. So let's say I want to pick up all the Illinois sales that are not on sale, and I want to pick up every other sale from other states that are on sale. So basically, if it's Illinois and it's regular price, I want to say yes. If it's Illinois and it's on sale, I want to say no. And if it's on sale from any other state other than Illinois, I want to say yes again. So we should be picking up all of these on sale items that are not from Illinois or regular price items that are from Illinois. So to do something like that, we can use XOR, and I'm going to say if this equals Illinois, comma, and this equals on sale, that should give me exactly what I was talking about. So see, Illinois, we get all the regular prices, yes. If it's both true, see, this is the case when we have Illinois and on sale, they are both true. So that gives us even number of truths. So that's a false. So that is a no. And then we have, again, on sale, but this is California. So then we get a yes. And another on sale that's not from Illinois, that's also a yes. So that would be an example of using XOR function. Now with if functions, you don't have to return text. You can really return anything you want. You can return a number as a result. So instead of getting yes or no, I could return ones or zeros. And if it's a number, I'm not wrapping it in quotes anymore. So now I'm going to get ones or zeros instead of those. And you could also return a reference to a cell. So you could say, if that's true, I'm going to return this number. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it 0. So now all the truths should get us the sales value, and all the falses should be just zeros. So that's a reference. And finally, you could also return formula as a result. So let's do a couple of examples here. So let's take this XOR off. Let's try to do something a little more meaningful, I guess, so it makes sense. So let's say we're going to apply some sort of commission for our salespeople. And the way we're applying commission for our salespeople, we generally give them 20% commission. However, if the item was on sale, we only give them 10% commission. So I want to give them 20% commission from sales number if it's regular price. Otherwise, I'm going to give them 10%. So to do that, I'm going to say if this equals to on sale, then what I'm going to do, if it's on sale, I should take the price and give them 10% of that. So I'm going to multiply it by 10%, comma. Otherwise, I'm going to grab the price and I'm going to multiply it by 20%. So now I have my commission structure. If it's a sale item, we give them 10% commission. Otherwise, we give them 20% commission. So let's hit enter and drag this down. Here it is. If it's not an on sale item, we have our 20% commission. Let's check something that's on sale. There it is, 166, so about 16. That makes sense. And a lot of time when you do this, you might want to avoid hard coding in these formulas. So instead of typing on sale here directly in your formula, you might have a cell when you type that value. So same applies to this 10% or 20%. Instead of doing this, you could do, a cell reference. So an example of that would be, I'm gonna just hit enter, create a new tab, and I'll call this commission structure. Gonna zoom in here. So I'm gonna say for on sale items, I'm gonna give them 10%. Otherwise, 20%. And now I have these values in this other tab with our commission structure. So I'm going to go back to my formula here. Instead of typing on sale here, I'm going to refer to the cell on the other tab. So I don't need the quotes anymore. So I'm going to remove those quotes, equals to. I'm going to go to my commission structure and refer to this cell. And that cell should be absolute, because as we move this formula down, we don't want that to move down from this cell to another cell. It's always referring to this on sale cell. So we're going to do F4 to lock the cell. There it is, our dollar signs in our formula bar. Now I'm going to move to my formula bar. I'm also going to change this 10% to reference to this cell. I'm going to remove 10%, click on the reference, and I'll lock with F4. And then finally 20%. I delete the reference, click on 20%, and F4 to lock that one as well. I hit enter, and that's my new formula that I can just drag down. And it should be exactly the same thing right now, but it should be easier to do any updates. So if I decide I'm changing my commission structure, right now we're giving for regular price 20%. Maybe we decided we're going to increase to 25%, right? So it's 7.5 for the first person right now. If I change this to 25%, go back, take a look, see it increased for those. Finally, I want to just mention dates one more time. I'm going to delete this. Let me start over from scratch. So remember, when we compare a date, if we do it directly in our formula, let's say I just want to mark everything greater than 2017, yes, anything that's less to no. So I'm going to say if this is greater than or equal to, and I'll use date value function, if you remember, to type my date. So I'm going to put my date in quotes, and my date is going to be 1/1/2017. So if that's greater than, now we have to put this in our if function. So we'll do if, open parentheses. So now if this A2, this is greater than or equal to this date value of whatever this is I'm typing, I'm going to say yes. Otherwise, I'm going to say no. So I'm going to close parentheses. Here we go. If I hit enter, see it says no because it's not greater than. If I drag this down, I'm going to get a yes for everything that's in 2017 or higher. Okay, so that's good. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this again, because sometimes you're not going to want to hard code your dates here in your formula, and what you're going to want to do is just type your date somewhere in the cell. So let me do something like a date range in here. So if we have a date range, so we wanted to pick up, let's say, just 2016. Let's do just 2016, right? So if I just do 2016 right now, this will pick up anything that's on 2016 or after. Now I want to just pick up 2016, not included 2017. So what I'm going to do a date range, and to do a date range similar to a number range, we're going to use our AND function. And AND function is going to allow us to do multiple comparisons. So this is the first comparison in my AND function, which is comparing to that value. And then I'm going to do comma, and I'm going to say, let's make sure that date is also less than or equal to 12/31/2016. And again, because this is a date, this has to be in date value function and in quotes. So I'm going to do date value, open parentheses, open the quotes, close the quotes after the date, and close parentheses for my date value function. I'm going to hit enter. That's a no because it's not in 2016. Obviously, I'm going to drag this down. See, we get a yes for 2016, no for 2017, yes for 2016 again. So now I might want to, again, do this as a reference to cells instead of just typing this date value in my formula. So now I'm going to go here, create a tab, call it date range. We zoom in, I'm going to say start and end. And here I'm going to type 1/1/2016 and my 12/31/2016, right? So that's my date range. Now to apply this in my formula, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to open my formula. And the key thing to remember about this, if you're going to refer to a cell that has a date in it, you don't want to do date value anymore because the date in a cell will just automatically evaluate to the value of the date. So I'm not going to use that date value function here anymore. I'm going to just erase this and I'm going to compare to the value in here to the cell. And I'm going to do, again, watching our formula in our formula bar, I'm going to do F4 to lock that. And then I'm going to also change the end reference. Again, I want to remove the whole date value function and refer to this cell and lock that as well. So now I should have this date range from this tab. I'm going to hit enter and I'm going to drag this down. So now we should get the same thing, but we have the option to easily change the range of dates. So now if I wanted to pick up a specific range of dates, let's say we want to pick anything that's in the first half of 2016 or something like that, right? So I'm going to go and do an AND cap. I'm going to say, let's go until 6/30/2016. So there it is. That's our date range. So we go from January through the end of June. If we go back and take a look, that should have now changed. See, this is now a no because it's not in the range anymore. And there it is. That should cover most of if function comparisons that you need to understand and how you use that with AND or XOR functions. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.